Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into how Brazil's massive data protection law went from being, well, kind of a paper tiger to a real threat with some seriously huge fines. We're going to unpack its chaotic start and what it all means for businesses right now.
Okay, so let's get right into it. We're talking about Brazil's big data protection law, the LGPD. When this thing first went into effect, it created this really strange situation. You had this powerful new law on the books, but the watchdog meant to enforce it, well, it wasn't quite ready to go. It was super confusing, and we're going to figure out what happened.
So, let's rewind the clock to 2018. This is when Brazil passed the LGPD. Now, this was a huge deal, a really comprehensive legal framework for data protection. And it was modeled pretty heavily on Europe's GDPR, which you've probably heard of. The whole point was to protect the fundamental rights of freedom and privacy for everyone in the country.
And right here, this is where the trouble started. The law itself became active in September 2020, but the central authority, the one that was supposed to oversee everything and enforce the rules, it was still being put together. This created this massive vacuum of uncertainty. You had the rules, but the referee was basically still in the locker room.
A big part of that early confusion, and this is kind of wild, came from two government decrees that were issued around the same time and had almost identical names. Seriously. A lot of people had no idea which was which or what they were for. So let's clear this whole mess up right now.
This slide really just cuts through all that noise. On the left, you've got the decree about privatizing lotteries. Yeah, you heard that right. It was all about economic policy. Then, on the right, you have the decree that actually created the data authority. You can totally see how with those similar numbers and the timing, everybody got mixed up.
So the bottom line is, that lottery decree was basically a complete distraction in this whole data privacy story. The only connection it had to the LGPD was that, any company that took over the lottery would have to follow the data law. But it did absolutely nothing to create or empower the agency that would enforce that law.
Okay, so let's leave the lotteries behind and focus on the decree that actually mattered, number 10.474. Let's see how this piece of legislation built the institution that would finally give the LGPD its power. And there it is. That decree officially created the ANPD, which is Brazil's National Data Protection Authority. This was the moment. The watchdog finally got its name and its official mission: to interpret the law, to watch over companies, and most importantly, to enforce the rules. And just look at how broad its powers are. We are not talking about some paper-pushing committee. The ANPD has the authority to set national policy, create technical rules, run inspections on companies, and, as we're about to see, hand out some very serious penalties. But here's the thing. Just creating the ANPD on paper wasn't enough. There was still a pretty long delay between when it was created and the moment its power became a real, tangible risk for businesses. The law still needed to grow its teeth.
This timeline just lays it all out perfectly. The law goes live in September 2020. A few months later, the ANPD is officially operational. But the real, honest-to-goodness turning point doesn't happen until February 2023. That's when this dosimetry regulation came out, and it's the piece that shifted Brazil from an era of soft compliance to one of hard compliance, with very real consequences.
This regulation was the absolute game changer. It laid out the specific playbook for how the ANPD would calculate and apply fines and other penalties. Before this, the threat was, kind of theoretical. After this regulation, it was a clear and present danger that every single company could actually measure.
And when we talk about financial risks, we're not talking about small change. The ANPD can hit a company with what it calls a simple fine of up to 2% of its annual revenue in Brazil. And that's capped at a whopping 50 million Brazilian reais. And get this, that's per infraction.
But, and this is so important, it is not just about the money. The ANPD has a whole toolkit. It can force a company to block access to data that was part of a violation. It can even bring out the biggest hammer of all: a partial or even total ban on data processing. That could literally shut down key parts of a business. So, with the stakes this high, what do you do? What's the playbook here? Because for any organization that deals with data in Brazil, this isn't just a legal headache anymore. It's a core strategic issue.
Now here's probably the most important insight of this whole story. The regulation itself tells you how to defend yourself. It literally says that having good governance, solid policies, and taking quick action to fix problems are all attenuating factors. What does that mean? It means those things can actually lower your fine if something bad happens. Being proactive isn't just about preventing a problem, it's about damage control.
So let's break it down into 3 concrete must-do actions. First, appoint a data protection officer, a DPO. This is your official liaison. Second, you have to do data protection impact assessments, especially before you start any high-risk projects. It proves you're thinking ahead. And third, build that proactive program. Don't wait for an incident to happen. Get your policies, your training, all of it in place right now.
You know, the whole story of Brazil's LGPD, from this law on paper to a powerful enforcement machine, it really forces every leader to ask this one critical question. In this new world, the way you handle data isn't some back-office IT thing. It's a fundamental choice you're making. Are you building trust with your customers, or are you just creating risk for your business?